changed South Africa. But the young girl thought
in Center George Pompidou. As for the work that was presented at 1989, that was of course being collected. But aside from that, in more recent years, African art also still were being collected, and this is one of them.
No, that's naked. It's so vulgar. It's not really nice. I want to put the knickers on or the pants on. So that's why it's actually the MFN article.
これがMFN の記事が出てきて、MFN の記事はこの
I think the reason is the dancers. The dancers try very hard to think about the genocide happening in Rwanda, and they really try to do something. They have a very strong passion and also the strong energy that they want to try to collaborate together, and that is why made it possible. And on the other hand, myself, I want to I was very delicate about the invasion from the cultural perspective. So as a result, I wanted to try to bring this to the direction that I'm able to bring out the element that is that the African people had.
I think my nerves are sort of calming down, so I just would like to say, first of all, thank you for coming here today. This project this day came together through a lot of conversations with Prune, so I'm really happy to actually see all of us here together, and I hope that we will be able to use our curiosity to really engage with the artists that are going to be speaking in this second session, as well as the curators and intellectuals that will be speaking in the second part. So I've just written a short text, so forgive me, I'll try to be a little bit dynamic, but I am going to read it just to introduce what I was hoping that we'd be able to achieve today through bringing these various people who obviously are coming from very different lands and different practices. So geography and culture is in motion. That we are here today is actually evidence of that. We say Africa and we say Japan, but these two places, one is a continent of 54 countries and the other is an island nation, are only places to begin. Our departure points today to hear stories, ideas, and questions told by artists, but more importantly by men, women, citizens, Japanese, Angolan, French, Cameroonian, Malian, and but ultimately, like you and I and us and we, stories told by people. I hope that through their curiosity, courage, their vulnerability, and availability to share, to engage, it will spark something in each of us.
What's indigo? Making indigo, it's growing bacteria, and those bacteria, when they get in contact with oxygen, they turn blue and make what we call the indigotin. And it's that took me long years to master that technique or that ancient technology was completely lost at that time. I cannot say it took me long years to master it, because I can say I'm even still learning, and it's probably gonna be the work of my entire life, I can say like that. And the things at the beginning I said it was not an ordinary color, because you have to understand how that works, how from living organism, you have to understand, you have to have the attention from that living organism, how you can extract or they can give you all their beauty with this blue dye stuff. This is what we call the indigo vat, the fermentation vat. This is also the most archaic technique in terms of natural dyes. I mean, as blue dye stuff.
Yokohama is a port city. Apparently, it is a city that is created by the various exchange in different cultures, characterized by the things that originally didn't belong to Japan. Now we are surrounded by all kinds of things that don't originally belong to Japan, and that makes us feel that we're always missing something. We're always missing. There are so many other things to see, and I wondered why this kind of feeling has begun in the original state. This is a portrait of my grandfather's grandfather. He was born in 1821. In the Edo period, he was a samurai bureaucrat. He was working in the port city, which is not Yokohama, not so far, but it's not Yokohama. Around that period, Japan was under sakoku, we say, meaning we had an isolation policy. Our country's commerce was closed to foreign countries. But one day in 1853, the Black Ship sailed at this port, this grand ship from the United States, who demanded us to open the port to Western trade.
The questions, the stupidity of past contaminating the present. Who are you? You, because I am Japan. Good sex with no cigarette in the end. I am Japan. Comforting shoulder. I am Japan. To say fuck you to your parents, it's not complicated. It's just hard. I am Japan. No God? No Jesus? Better a lot of gods, and at the end of the meal, whom are you thanking? Thank me, because I am Japan. If you indulge me and accept that I am Japan, the next natural question is, who are you, Mr. Japan? Look in the mirror and see how many different people you can kill with your own life. You are going to die. All of you present here are going to die, and you know this. You can try and say it with me. I am going to die. No, you can really try and say it. I'm going to die.
Yes, Gendai art, which means modern art. And if you were to search, this is the sort of image you get. The art that you see randomly or just go through, there is a very interesting element. None of them is conceptual or minimum. It's mostly pop art. By the way, this is my work. Only pop art comes out as a result of this search. So, symbolic dogs or skull and something that's really kind of easy to understand. You don't really find anything complex. It's a pumpkin. It's by Kusama-san, artist Kusama. All the work that you see is really very easy to understand. Many of them falls into the pop art after the Andy Warhol. I have created the modern art course in my university, but when I say no one comes, but when I say modern art, people come. So I think in Japan, how the art is being demanded. This is probably not much different from the olden times, where this heaven concept was being introduced from Buddhism. I think love was being mentioned, but then from Japanese perspective, it's not so much about art, but then it's more about heaven. What the people feel, have, is so-called a popular culture. So that is how Japanese feel about this. And based on that information, I would like to show you some of my artwork.
The story I'm going to tell you now is a story basically between two people that never met. Someone who is a sculptor in Africa, let's say Uganda, and he works with the structure of the element. The other one is a lacquer maker, urushi maker, and he works on the skin, on the texture of things. Okay, these guys have never met, obviously, but my story is to make this meeting possible. So I went back to Cameroon. I went back to Bamileke land, where my mom is from, and I brought in Japan 4 sculptures, and I worked together with a lacquer maker in Japan for 2.5 years to make those sculptures that are called blood brothers, obviously because of the people at the beginning, the two artists that never met. So those blood brothers represent these universal alien universality, let's say, that we have in common. They look at you, they look at me, and they show you and they show us what direction we could go, an idea of the future. When you combine those two cultures, when you try to find a third story, this represents a little bit that direction.
Nor are they intended to constitute a survey. This is not a survey of what is being done in experimental film and video in Africa and its diasporas. The films, rather, were chosen because individually and as a group, they seem to us to pose uncomfortable questions about the violence, political, economic, social, psychological, that attends living in an urban, late capitalist world. Some of them do so with great humor, others in a deadly serious manner, and some of them in ways that seem not at all to address these questions. The result, and this was very much the goal of the process, is emphatically non-consensual. If you were to bring all of the filmmakers together in one room, what you would have would be heated conversations. And if you added the curators to the mix, things would get even more complicated, because the three of us do not bring a unitary point of view to the project either.
And there's another thing that was said in the panel before by Megumi. She said, the more I'm trying to get away from my Japanitude, the more I discover that I'm Japanese. If everybody would have this kind of basic intelligence, I think that nationalism would not exist anymore, because I think that one becomes nationalistic when one starts to lose grasp of his own roots. I shall never be a nationalistic, because I know I pretend to know who I am. Therefore, the other, I don't fear. It's interesting when we're addressing issues like the other, because I have many problems. One of them is with post-colonial studies, the definition of otherness, because in the dialectics of the post-colonial studies that came up with this otherness thing, was that they invented, or actually they crafted, they printed victimization as a way of thinking. When they would address otherness, they were talking about them, the non-Western people, the other being the non-Western people. By not admitting that we are always the other of another, they were therefore admitting that the system, the way the system was organized, was right. So, from the other and I,
US, but spending 2 years in North Africa, I found that there was a completely different way of seeing things, and it was a very different value, many people with a very different value, and that was the first time I realized that. Earlier, Simon, in Simon's presentation, and he did not talk anything about Africa, and I found it extremely interesting. That itself is to not talking about Africa means that showing what Africans' point of view could be. That's how I felt. Especially, ultimately, it's the individual that makes a decision. It's the individual that you could either be on the writing side or you could be on the receiving side of that history. But anyway, it's the individual that makes a decision, and that is the positioning of the artist.
But also, actually, the part of the humanitarianization of the aid activities. I was actually involved in the world's doctors. That was the world the organization, and I was involved in the activities for 6.5 years in Japan. And so during the course of their activities, I actually came to know that Africa is not as an earth, but Africa is the kind of the continent which are the poorest in the world, and also the children and the women who were actually suffered from the violence and so forth. So that actually I came to know about that, and of course it was very hard to believe. But actually the backside of that is there is a cause, and I really wanted to investigate the cause of that, and like colonialism, and also as Simon said, the center to periphery, and that kind of the notion. So that kind of things I came to learn about. But having said that, actually the human support rather than actually telling the fact what is going on in Africa through that human support, I thought actually the African people should come up with their own ways and deliver the message and then tell the fact to the other people. I thought then in that way they can tell more truth, or they're very close to the truth and reality. So that's why I thought actually if that is much better, because the individual voice and the individual artist can raise a voice. So it's really different from the reading the articles or the finding the situation through the activities of the human support. So I thought I should really the approach to the artists, African artists, so that they can deliver their own messages directly.
I had two questions. The first one, and I talked to Ms. La about it yesterday or 2 days ago. I had a question about the expectations of this conference, given that there's no curators who are working on the continent, who are, those who are organizing, in charge of organizations, and what dialogues you want to have, within the frame of contemporary African art. If those people are not represented, what are the expectations? And also, I had a question to you. You showed Ellen Atsui, and you showed one exhibition where you're contextualizing his work through culture. And I was wondering if it was the opposite case. If, say, for instance, if a curator was showing, I don't know, Mariko Mori in Europe or in Africa, do you think that we would have to have the whole of the Japanese culture to understand her work, or or do you think that her work could be understood without all the ethnographic elements?